Hey bookmarks and bookworms, welcome back to the channel and welcome to Bookmas Day 5. Today's video is all about the best literary fiction that I've read in 2023, and today I've highlighted 5 books that I want to talk to you guys about. Thank you to those of you who have already signed up for the 2024 book club, and thank you to those of you who have signed up for 2 extra videos a month. The links to join the book club and also to receive 2 extra videos a month from me are always linked down below. But without further ado, let's roll the Bookmas intro. So, as I say, I have 5 books to talk to you about today. 3 are written by women, 2 are written by men, and I have not ranked these books. I'm purely going off of the order in which I read them. My ranking best books of the year video will be coming up later in Bookmas. So right now, today, these are not ranked. They're just in chronological order of when I read them. So throwing it way back to the start of the year, in January I read The Bee Stings by Benjamin Myers. Benjamin Myers is one of my favourite authors, and this is my highest rated novel by him. It's literary historical fiction and it has one of the best endings I have ever read in fiction. It was a killer ending and I did not see it coming. I gasped, I was just completely devastated. The ending of this is seared into my mind. So we open the novel following a young girl who is fleeing across the countryside in the north of England, carrying her baby with her. And she is being pursued by a local poacher who has been employed by a local priest to basically hunt down this girl. She was under the priest's care and he was abusing her, resulting in the child that she now is holding. But this novel is absolutely full of suspense because it is kind of a cat and mouse as we flip between the girl's perspective and the poacher and the priest's perspective, and we see them gaining on her and we see, right, is she going to outrun them? Is she going to be able to escape and be free of them, or is she going to be caught in the long run? And so it really is, the suspense builds and the pace builds, and it is just absolutely a delight to read. So I highly recommend you check out this book. Heading now to February, this is Miriam Teyes with Women Talking. This was my first Miriam Teyes book, and this was another 5-star book. All of the ones on this list are 5-star books. And the most special element of this book was the choral nature of the narrative voice. You're following a group of Mennonite women as they sit around in the loft of a barn discussing whether they're going to leave, stay, or do nothing in response to the men in their community drugging and raping them continually, all of them, during the night. And so we hear from all of the women as a collective, and it really serves to reinforce the collective nature of the Mennonite community and generally religious communities, and I guess you could also say cults as well in that sort of area of the world. The back and forth in the discussion between the women and their thinking and their reasoning behind the decisions that they put forward. Some want to stay, some want to leave, some want to do nothing. And then also the more nuanced aspects of the discussion, like, for example, okay, if they are going to leave, what is the age threshold of the boys that they're going to take with them? And there was some discrepancy over, okay, well, we're going to take all of the female children and the male children up to the age of 13, but then past that they're going to be left behind to be raised by their fathers. And then there was also a discussion around, well, what about the disabled children who are older than 13, and what about the impacts that will have on the behaviour of the 13 plus boys, in that if they're going to be raised by essentially immoral, bad men, then you're then perpetuating that cycle and they will become potentially those same bad men raping people. So yeah, there is that element of very nuanced and very morally grey discussion that is happening. You don't really remember the individual women because they are a collective voice, and that was really, really strong. I also really liked that Miriam Teyes put into the plot that the voting was all done pictorially. There weren't words, because telling us without actually telling us, without actually saying the words, that these Mennonite women are not educated. They can't read, they're illiterate, and so everything is done through pictorial representation. And I thought that was another aspect of revealing the culture without explicitly saying, you know, the Mennonite community keep their women uneducated, presumably because if they were educated, they would realise what was happening and they would leave. So I went on to read another novel by Miriam Tays this year, kind of as a response to loving women talking so much. I read Irma Voth, and Irma Voth was 4.5-star novel for me, so just not quite as good as Women Talking. But still, I feel like I found an exceptional author this year in Miriam Tays, and I cannot wait to pick up more work by her. So up next in March, I read Damon Galgut's The Good Doctor. This was absolutely phenomenal. Damon Galgut is a favourite author of mine because of his ability to create such atmosphere and focus so strongly on the environment that he's situating his novels in. Galgut is a South African author who you may know from winning the Booker Prize with The Promise several years ago, and his books all heavily focus on the South African landscape, and as well as the physical landscape, the political landscape, the social landscape, and the cultural landscape of South Africa. So it is fascinating reading his books. His plots always remind me of an onion in that you peel back the superficial layers and you get to layers and layers and layers of meaning, and behind what is superficially not a lot is happening. This is not a plot-led book, and most of his books that I've read aren't necessarily plot-led, but they are almost environment-led and context-led and people-led, and I love that sort of writing, because the more you get into the plot, you actually realise how much he is saying without actually saying very much at all, which I know is a confusing kind of context to say out loud right now, but it is just sublime. The doctor we follow in The Good Doctor has been stuck in a rural clinic, working there for about 10 years. He's become disenchanted with the medical system, the government system, because he spent 10 years fighting the government, and we have flashbacks to that time in his life. And he's also become disenchanted with I think life itself. This is not a happy person, this is not a content person, this is not a purpose-led life. And so that dissatisfaction is creating this constant undercurrent of tension within the plot. And Galgut is a master of suspense. You're building and you're building and you're building, almost like Kazuo Ishiguro in that sense. He's an author that I could compare Galgut to, that they both are able to kind of pull their narrative thread so taut that you feel the suspense through the page as the reader, and you're constantly thinking, right, when is this going to break? When is this image going to be shattered? And when is this transformation going to happen to this character that we're following and that we're really invested in? I was thinking about this book after I put it down, and I was trying to carve out times in my day when I could go back and read this book. It was compelling, it was quiet, it's subtle, it's masterful, it's everything I look for in my books, especially in my literary fiction. Next up, coming from my May reading, this is Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. This is following, this is kind of a multi-perspective. We're following 5 ex-students of a Native American residential school, I believe in Canada. And this is a really easy, nice read. The structure really complements the book itself. So we have the 5 perspectives and all of them are well balanced. All of them flow seamlessly. It's very fluid. This is easy reading in terms of literary fiction, because you just flow through the narrative. Nothing gets stuck, the pacing is good, nothing is particularly heavy in the plot line in terms of slowing down the pace of the book whilst dealing with a subject matter that is showing a very dark aspect in Canada's and North America's history. And through all of that time, we are bouncing around between the 5 characters. We're not following one, then the other, then the other. We return to certain characters and don't return to others. And I just feel like in a quite structurally complex novel, I feel like that is quite difficult to pull off, and this book pulls it off, as well as being an entertaining, enjoyable read. So this was definitely 5 stars and an impressive author that I will be definitely researching and getting into other books by her. Heading to September, this is Study for Obedience. I read this as part of the Booker longlist. Not only was it the only book from this year's longlist that I rated 5 stars, it's also the only book from this year's longlist that I actually managed to finish because I enjoyed it so much. This year, as you guys know, I am DNFing liberally in order to try and get my star average rating for the year above 4.0, which I have successfully done, because I've been such a heavy DNFer and DNFing books that are not hitting a 3.5 star level. So that was the reason why I DNF'd the majority of the Booker longlist, because they weren't hitting that level. So Study for Obedience is essentially about a woman who has moved into a rural community. Her identity is deliberately withheld from us by the author, and the only thing we really know is that she doesn't speak the same language as the community in which she is trying to integrate. And so it's really emphasising the stifling, almost fearful quality of language itself when you do not possess the same language as the people around you, and how isolating and scary that is, especially when the community around you already is not open to you, already does not accept you, and already does not want you there. The basic plot line of this is that bad things happen when the foreigner appears, because this woman moves into this village and then all of a sudden a string of things start happening that are negative and are then associated with this woman, hence why the community does not want her there. Which does explain in part why it rubbed some members of the BookTube community up the wrong way when they first got into it, because BookTube is a highly liberal space, and so that sort of narrative of no foreigners are welcome, la la la, is not going to go down well in BookTube, I would say, as a whole. Especially as this woman tries to integrate and tries to be part of the community, but it's ultimately saying, as a foreigner, no matter how hard you integrate, no matter how long you be here, you will never be accepted here and you will never belong here. This is not your space. And that is the narrative for the entire novella. It's about 120 pages, and for the entire thing, that is the narrative. Until, like all short stories do, the narrative is flipped on its head at the end, and that was the really impressive aspect technically in the writing of this book. It's not that this woman was all of a sudden embraced by the community in the final page. Nothing had changed in their attitude towards her, but her attitude towards them had changed, and that she was going to live there regardless of their negative opinion of her, and regardless of them not wanting her there. She had resigned herself to making that life for herself work. And that was the kind of shift in the last page of the novel that kind of meant that the novella was successful as a novella, right? And that you go a certain way with this character and then the narrative is flipped. And I really thought that was done superbly by Sarah Bernstein. So with that, that is the end of today's video, guys. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more Bookmas content. Day 6 of Bookmas will be coming out in 2 days' time, and that will be all of the translated fiction new releases that I can't wait to read in 2024. So keep your eyes peeled for that one, and I will see you very soon in my next one. Bye guys.